Everyone saw the billionaire lying there, but only one person stopped to ask if he was okay. Ethan Callahan had spent years building a life that most people only dreamed about. At 39 years old, he was the founder and CEO of one of the most successful technology companies in the country. His name appeared in business magazines, his decisions moved markets, and his schedule was planned months in advance. To the world, Ethan had everything. A luxury apartment overlooking Manhattan, a powerful company, and the kind of success people spent their entire lives chasing. But on a quiet morning in early winter, none of that mattered. The city moved around him as if he was just another stranger. Ethan had left a long executive meeting before sunrise, carrying the weight of another impossible decision. His company was growing quickly, but the pressure never stopped. Every day brought another demand, another expectation, another reminder that everyone saw him as a leader who could never slow down. He walked through the busy streets of New York, surrounded by people rushing to work, but he felt completely disconnected from the world around him. Then, for the first time in years, his body forced him to stop. The cold air, the exhaustion, and the endless pressure caught up with him. He lost his balance and collapsed on the sidewalk. People noticed. Some looked surprised. Some whispered. A few paused for a moment before continuing on their way. In a city filled with millions of people, Ethan suddenly became invisible. Until Olivia Parker stopped. Olivia was 29 years old, a single mother who had learned how to keep moving no matter how difficult life became. She worked long hours at a small neighborhood cafe and spent every free moment caring for her 6-year-old son, Noah. She did not have expensive clothes, a powerful title, or a life filled with comfort. What she had was compassion. When Olivia saw a man sitting alone on the sidewalk, she did not see a billionaire. She did not see a famous CEO. She saw a person who needed help. She quickly walked toward him and gently asked if he could hear her. Her voice was calm. Her expression showed concern, not curiosity. While others wondered who he was, Olivia only wondered if he was all right. Ethan slowly opened his eyes and saw a woman he had never met standing beside him. There was no excitement in her face, no hidden expectation, no attempt to gain something from the situation. She simply wanted to make sure he was safe. "Are you okay?" she asked. It was a simple question, but Ethan could not remember the last time someone had asked him that without wanting something in return. Olivia helped him sit comfortably and stayed until she was certain he could recover. She never asked about his company. She never asked about his money. She never knew that the exhausted man in front of her was someone whose name appeared in headlines across the country. To Olivia, he was just someone having a difficult moment. And to Ethan, this small act of kindness would become the moment that changed the direction of his entire life. Because sometimes the person who stops to help you is the person who reminds you what it means to be human. The next morning, Ethan Callahan woke up in a quiet private room, surrounded by comfort that most people could only imagine. The room was inside a luxury medical center in Manhattan, arranged by his assistant the moment they learned what happened. Everything around him represented the life he had built. Expensive furniture, advanced technology, and people ready to solve any problem within minutes. Yet Ethan could not stop thinking about one person who had nothing to gain from helping him. Olivia Parker. For years, Ethan had been surrounded by people who knew his title before they knew his personality. They knew the CEO. They knew the businessman. They knew the man who controlled a company worth billions. But Olivia had looked at him and only seen a person who needed help. That simple difference stayed in his mind. His assistant entered the room with a report about the incident. "Her name is Olivia Parker," he explained. "She works at a small cafe nearby. She has a 6-year-old son named Noah." Ethan listened carefully. Usually, he would have moved on after receiving basic information. He was used to solving problems quickly and returning to his busy schedule. But this time was different. He wanted to understand the woman who had stopped when everyone else kept walking. Later that afternoon, Ethan visited the neighborhood cafe where Olivia worked. He expected to find someone who recognized him immediately. Instead, Olivia looked up from the counter with the same calm expression she had shown the day before. She smiled politely. "I hope you are feeling better," she said. Ethan was surprised. There was no excitement in her voice, no curiosity about his identity. She simply cared about whether he was okay. "You know who I am?" Ethan asked. Olivia shook her head. "Not until now." She looked at the article on his phone that showed his company and his picture. "I guess you are someone important." Ethan almost laughed. Important. It was a word he heard every day. But coming from Olivia, it sounded different. Most people would have asked for something after helping me, he said. Olivia looked confused. Why would I do that? She replied. Someone needed help. That was enough. Her answer stayed with him. In Ethan's world, almost every interaction had a purpose. Meetings had goals. Conversations had strategies. Relationships often came with expectations. But Olivia had done something rare. She had given kindness without waiting for a reward. While Ethan sat at the small cafe, he noticed things he normally ignored. The handwritten menu on the wall. The customers who knew Olivia by name. The way she smiled at every person who walked through the door. Then Noah came in after school, carrying a small backpack and a drawing he wanted to show his mother. Ethan watched as Olivia's entire expression changed. The successful CEO who could negotiate million-dollar deals suddenly found himself watching a simple moment between a mother and her child. It felt honest. It felt real. Before leaving, Ethan thanked Olivia again. She simply smiled and told him to take care of himself. Those words followed him long after he returned to his world of meetings and responsibilities. For the first time in a long time, Ethan wondered if he had spent years chasing success while missing the things that truly mattered. He did not know it yet, but the woman who helped him on the sidewalk had already started changing the way he saw his entire life. After that afternoon at the small neighborhood cafe, Ethan Callahan found himself thinking about a place he had almost forgotten existed. A place where people smiled without expecting anything in return. A place where conversations were not about investments, deadlines, or business decisions. For most of his life, Ethan had surrounded himself with people who measured value through success. Olivia Parker reminded him that some things could not be measured at all. Over the next few days, Ethan tried to return to his normal routine. He attended meetings, reviewed company reports, and made decisions that affected thousands of employees. But something had changed. Every time he looked at the city from his office window, he remembered the small cafe and the woman who treated him like an ordinary person. His assistant noticed the difference. "You seem distracted lately," he said during a meeting. Ethan looked at the documents in front of him and paused. "Maybe I am finally paying attention," he replied. Meanwhile, Olivia continued living the same life she had always known. She woke up early, prepared Noah for school, worked long hours, and carefully managed every expense. She was not waiting for someone to rescue her. She had built her life one difficult day at a time. But even strong people sometimes carried quiet worries. Olivia worried about Noah's future. She worried about keeping their small apartment comfortable. She worried about whether she was giving her son everything he deserved. What Ethan noticed about her was not her struggles. It was her strength. One evening, Ethan returned to the cafe again. This time, he did not come with a formal thank you gift or a business offer. He simply wanted to talk. Olivia looked surprised when she saw him walk through the door. "You are becoming a regular customer," she said with a small smile. Ethan smiled back. "Maybe I like the coffee." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe you like escaping your office." For the first time in a long time, Ethan laughed without thinking about how he appeared to others. They talked about simple things. The neighborhood, their favorite foods, childhood memories. Ethan learned that Olivia once dreamed of opening her own bakery, but had put that dream aside after becoming a mother. Olivia learned that Ethan had built his company from nothing, but rarely allowed himself time to enjoy what he created. The conversation was easy because neither of them was trying to impress the other. They were simply being honest. Before leaving, Ethan noticed a small notebook near the counter. Inside were Olivia's handwritten ideas for future recipes and business plans. He realized she was not just someone surviving each day. She was someone with dreams waiting for the right moment. "You should not give up on this," Ethan said. Olivia looked at the notebook and smiled softly. Dreams are easier when life is simple. Ethan understood those words more than she knew. His life looked simple from the outside because everything was available to him. But emotionally, he had been carrying a different kind of weight. As he walked back through the city that night, Ethan realized something important. He had entered Olivia's world because he wanted to thank her. But now, he was returning because he wanted to understand her. He still did not know where this unexpected connection would lead. He only knew that the woman who saw him at his weakest moment was slowly showing him a version of life he had never taken the time to notice. For the first time in years, Ethan Callahan found himself looking forward to something that had nothing to do with business. His days were still filled with meetings, decisions, and responsibilities, but there was now a small place in New York where he felt like he could finally slow down. The neighborhood cafe had become a place where he was not treated like a billionaire CEO. He was simply Ethan. And Olivia Parker was the reason why. She never asked about his company. She never tried to impress him. She never changed the way she spoke to him after learning who he was. That honesty was something Ethan rarely experienced. One afternoon, Ethan arrived at the cafe and noticed Olivia organizing a small collection of handwritten recipes behind the counter. He could see the care she put into every detail. The notes were filled with ideas for pastries, family recipes, and dreams she had carried for years. "You really want to open your own bakery someday," Ethan said. Olivia looked at the notebook and smiled. "I used to, before life became more complicated." Ethan understood those words. He knew what it felt like to put personal dreams aside because of responsibility. But unlike him, Olivia had never lost her kindness while carrying her challenges. "Maybe complicated does not mean impossible," Ethan replied. Olivia looked at him thoughtfully. She appreciated his encouragement, but she also knew the difference between words and reality. She had learned to depend on herself. Later that evening, Ethan returned to his office and looked through the city lights from his window. For the first time, he was not thinking about expansion plans or company growth. He was thinking about Olivia's dream. He wanted to help, but he also knew he had to be careful. Olivia did not need someone to take over her life. She needed someone who believed in her. The next day, Ethan made a decision. Instead of offering money directly, he used his experience and connections to create opportunities. He found information about small business programs and resources that could help new entrepreneurs. He wanted Olivia to have the chance to build something through her own effort. When he shared the information with her, Olivia looked surprised. "You did this for me?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "I did this because you have something worth building." Olivia was quiet for a moment. She had expected generosity from someone like Ethan to come with conditions. But there were none. No expectations. No request for anything in return. Just support. That changed the way she saw him. Meanwhile, Ethan began noticing something about himself. Before meeting Olivia, he believed helping people was something powerful people did from a distance. Write a check, fund a project, move on. But Olivia showed him that real kindness required presence. It required listening. It required seeing another person's hopes and fears. Their worlds were still completely different. Ethan lived among executives and investors. Olivia lived between work, motherhood, and careful decisions. Yet somehow, those differences became the reason they understood each other. One had everything people could see. The other had everything people often forgot to value. Neither of them realized it yet, but their connection was becoming something deeper than gratitude. It was becoming a bond built on respect, trust, and the simple truth that sometimes the person who changes your life is the person you never expected to meet. For a while, Ethan Callahan believed the distance between his world and Olivia Parker's could be crossed easily. He thought kindness, honesty, and good intentions were enough to bring two different lives together. But he soon discovered that the biggest challenges were not created by the differences between them. They came from the people who believed those differences should never disappear. Ethan's world was built around reputation. Every decision he made was watched by investors, business partners, and the media. People admired his success, but they also expected him to follow a certain image. A billionaire CEO was supposed to attend exclusive events, build powerful connections, and choose relationships that matched his position. Spending time at a small neighborhood cafe with a single mother was something many people could not understand. One afternoon, Ethan invited Olivia and Noah to a community event organized by his company. He wanted to show them a different part of his life, not the world of luxury, but the world where he spent most of his days working. Olivia was hesitant at first. She worried about feeling out of place. She did not want people looking at her and wondering why she was there. Ethan noticed her concern. "You do not have to become part of my world," he told her. "I just want you to see that you are welcome in it." Those words stayed with Olivia. She had spent years feeling like she had to prove she belonged wherever she went. She had learned to stay quiet, work hard, and avoid attention. But Ethan treated her differently. He never made her feel smaller because of her circumstances. During the event, Olivia saw another side of Ethan. She saw employees who respected him, people who appreciated his leadership, and moments when he showed genuine care for others. He was not just the powerful businessman she had heard about. He was someone who carried responsibility seriously. Ethan also noticed how naturally Olivia connected with people around her. She spoke with employees, listened to their stories, and made everyone feel comfortable. She had a way of bringing warmth into every room she entered. Later that evening, after the event ended, Ethan and Olivia stood outside the building while the city lights surrounded them. "You know," Olivia said softly, "I used to think people with your life had everything figured out." Ethan smiled. "And I used to think people with my life had nothing left to learn." They both laughed quietly. But behind that moment was a deeper understanding. They were beginning to realize that they were not as different as they once believed. They both carried responsibilities. They both had dreams they had postponed. They both knew what it felt like to appear strong while quietly carrying pressure. However, their growing connection did not go unnoticed. Some people around Ethan began asking questions. They wondered why a successful CEO was spending so much time with someone outside his social circle. They questioned whether Olivia belonged in his life. Ethan heard those opinions, but for the first time, he did not immediately worry about what others thought. He cared more about what was real. Still, Olivia began to wonder if their different worlds would eventually create a distance they could not overcome. She cared about Ethan, but she also knew she could not lose herself trying to fit into a life that was never meant for her. And Ethan knew that protecting their connection would require more than words. It would require him to prove that what mattered most was not status, but the person standing beside him. The questions around Ethan Callahan and Olivia Parker continued to grow, but the hardest part was not what other people thought. The hardest part was the quiet fear they both carried inside. Ethan had spent his entire life learning how to handle pressure. He could negotiate major deals, lead thousands of employees, and make decisions that changed the future of his company. But when it came to something personal, something that mattered to his heart, he realized he was entering unfamiliar territory. Olivia noticed the changes around them. She saw the curiosity from strangers. She saw the headlines that appeared whenever Ethan was seen outside his usual business environment. She understood that being close to him meant stepping into a world where every choice could be noticed. And even though Ethan never made her feel like she did not belong, Olivia wondered if she was creating problems for him. One evening, she sat with Ethan at the small cafe after closing. The lights were dim, the chairs were placed on the tables, and the quiet space felt like a place where they could finally speak honestly. "Ethan, I need to ask you something," Olivia said. He looked at her carefully. "What is it?" She took a moment before answering. "Do you ever feel like your life would be easier if you never met me?" The question surprised him. Not because he had never thought about challenges, but because he realized Olivia was carrying a worry she had never shared. Ethan shook his head. "No, I think my life would be easier without change. But easier does not always mean better." Olivia listened quietly. Ethan continued. "Before I met you, I had everything organized. Every hour had a purpose. Every decision had a reason. But I never stopped to ask if I was actually happy." Those words touched Olivia because she understood what it meant to keep moving without asking what you truly wanted. She had spent years focusing on survival, making sure Noah had everything he needed, even when she ignored her own dreams. Ethan had spent years building success, even when he ignored his own emotions. In different ways, they had both forgotten parts of themselves. Meanwhile, pressure inside Ethan's company was increasing. Some executives wanted him to focus only on business growth. They believed personal matters should stay separate from leadership. Ethan understood their concerns, but he also realized something important. He did not want to return to the person he was before. The person who measured every decision by profit and reputation. The person who had everything except peace. A few days later, Ethan made a choice that surprised many people around him. Instead of hiding Olivia from public attention, he openly supported the community programs she cared about. He used his influence to create opportunities for small business owners and local families. But he made sure Olivia remained at the center of her own journey. He did not speak for her. He simply created space for her voice to be heard. When Olivia learned what he had done, she was emotional. "You did not have to do this," she said. Ethan smiled. "I know. That is why I wanted to." For the first time, Olivia understood that Ethan was not trying to change her life because he thought she was incomplete. He respected her strength. He believed in her dreams. He saw the person she already was. And Ethan began to understand that love was not about finding someone who completed you. It was about finding someone who reminded you that you were already more than you believed. Their worlds were still different. Their challenges were still real. But for the first time, neither of them was afraid of the distance between them, because they were no longer trying to fit into each other's lives. They were learning how to build something new together. For the first time in many years, Ethan Callahan felt like he was no longer running away from something. He was finally moving towards something that mattered. The changes in his life were not dramatic from the outside. He still walked into the same office building, attended important meetings, and made decisions as the CEO of a successful company. But inside, everything had shifted. He was no longer measuring his days only by achievements. He was paying attention to the people around him, the moments he once ignored, and the emotions he once pushed aside. Olivia Parker had changed the way he saw the world, but she had never tried to change him. That was what made the difference. She never asked him to become someone else. She simply reminded him of the person he had forgotten. One weekend morning, Ethan visited Olivia's cafe and found her working on a new business plan. The small notebook that once held simple ideas had become something more organized. She had written down possible locations, menu ideas, and plans for creating a place where people could feel welcome. Ethan smiled as he looked at her notes. "You really are serious about this," he said. Olivia looked up and smiled. "I think I finally believe I can do it." Those words meant more to Ethan than she realized. He remembered the woman he first met, someone who helped a stranger without expecting anything. Now he was watching that same woman take a step toward her own dream. He understood that his role was not to carry her dream for her. His role was to support her while she built it herself. As the weeks passed, Olivia began preparing for the next chapter of her life. She attended small business workshops and connected with other local entrepreneurs. Ethan offered advice when she asked, but he respected every decision she made. That respect was what made Olivia trust him more. She had met people who saw her situation before they saw her potential. Ethan was different. He saw her strength first. At the same time, Ethan began making changes inside his company. He introduced new programs focused on supporting employees and small communities. His leadership style became more personal. His team noticed that he listened more carefully and considered the human side of every decision. Some people wondered what had caused this transformation. Ethan never gave a complicated answer. He simply said that someone reminded him what mattered. One evening, Ethan and Olivia walked through the city after closing the cafe. The streets were quiet, and the lights reflected on the sidewalks. Olivia looked at him and asked, "Do you ever miss the way your life was before?" Ethan thought about the question. The old Ethan had more control. He had fewer uncertainties. He had a clear path that everyone admired. But he also had a life that felt incomplete. "I miss knowing exactly what tomorrow would look like," he admitted. "But I do not miss feeling like something was missing." Olivia smiled because she understood. Both of them had discovered that a meaningful life was not always the easiest one. It was the one that made you feel connected. As their relationship grew stronger, Ethan realized the truth he had been slowly learning since the day Olivia helped him. The greatest change in his life did not come from gaining more power or success. It came from one person who saw him when he was at his lowest and treated him with kindness. Olivia had not saved him because he was a billionaire. She had helped him because he was human. And that simple act of compassion had become the beginning of a completely different future. The small cafe that once represented Olivia Parker's daily struggle slowly became a place filled with new possibilities. Every morning, she opened the doors with the same determination she had carried for years, but now there was something different in her eyes. She was no longer only trying to survive. She was building a future. The dream she once kept hidden inside a notebook was becoming real. Ethan Callahan watched this transformation with quiet pride. He knew the easiest thing would have been to use his wealth and create everything for her. He could have bought a location, hired a team, and solved every challenge within days. But he understood something important. Olivia did not need someone to build her dream. She needed the chance to prove to herself that she could. That was the difference between helping someone and taking away their independence. Over the next several months, Olivia worked on every detail of her future bakery. She researched ingredients, planned recipes, and learned about managing a small business. There were difficult days when she questioned whether she was ready. There were moments when the responsibility felt overwhelming. But each time she looked at Noah, she remembered why she started. She wanted him to grow up knowing that dreams could still exist, even after difficult seasons of life. Ethan supported her in ways that mattered most. He listened when she needed advice. He encouraged her when she doubted herself. But he never made decisions for her. That was something Olivia valued deeply. She had spent years feeling like circumstances controlled her life. Ethan reminded her that she still had the power to choose her own direction. Meanwhile, Ethan's own life continued to change. The man who once spent every waking hour focused on business began making room for the people around him. His employees noticed that he became more patient. His leadership became less about numbers and more about purpose. He started asking different questions, not only how much a project could earn, but how it could improve lives. His company remained successful, but the reason behind that success became different. One evening, Ethan visited Olivia's new bakery location before it officially opened. The space was still being prepared. The walls were freshly painted, and boxes filled with supplies were waiting to be organized. Olivia stood in the middle of the empty room, looking around with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I cannot believe this is actually happening," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "You made this happen." Olivia looked at him. "You helped me." Ethan shook his head. "I supported you, but you did the work." Those words meant everything to her. Because for the first time in a long time, Olivia did not see herself as someone who had simply overcome difficulties. She saw herself as someone who created something meaningful. Later that night, Ethan and Olivia sat outside the bakery, watching the city lights appear one by one. They talked about the journey that brought them there, the unexpected meeting, the simple act of kindness, the moments when they almost believed their worlds were too different. But now they understood something they never expected. Their differences were not what separated them. They were what allowed them to teach each other. Ethan gave Olivia confidence that her dreams deserved space in the world. Olivia gave Ethan a reason to slow down and appreciate the life he had built. Together, they discovered that the strongest connections are not created by having the same background. They are created by seeing the value in another person. And as the doors of Olivia's bakery prepared to open, both of them knew this was not the end of their journey. It was the beginning of something they had never imagined possible. Years later, Ethan Callahan still remembered the morning when everything changed. Not because of the success that came afterward, not because of the new opportunities, and not because of the life people now admired. He remembered it because a stranger chose to stop. A single moment of kindness had created a path neither Ethan nor Olivia Parker could have predicted. On the opening day of Olivia's bakery, Ethan stood quietly near the entrance and watched as people walked through the doors with smiles on their faces. The room was filled with warmth, laughter, and the comforting smell of freshly baked goods. It was everything Olivia had imagined when she first wrote those ideas in her small notebook. But what mattered most was not the size of the bakery or the attention it received. What mattered was that Olivia had built it herself. She had taken a dream she once thought was impossible and turned it into something real. Ethan watched her greet customers, help her team, and create the same feeling of kindness that had changed his life. He realized that the woman who once helped him on a difficult morning was now creating a place where countless other people could feel welcomed. Olivia looked across the room and saw Ethan standing there. She smiled because she knew how much he had changed since the day they met. The man who once measured everything through achievement had discovered the value of simple moments. He still led a successful company. He still carried important responsibilities. But he was no longer defined only by his title. He was a partner, a friend, and someone who understood that a meaningful life was built through connection. Later that evening, Ethan and Olivia returned to the street where they first met. The city was busy, just like it had been years before. Cars moved through the streets, people hurried toward their destinations, and the world continued moving around them. But this time, they stood there together. Ethan looked around and remembered how different he felt that day. He had been surrounded by success, but disconnected from the people around him. Then Olivia appeared and showed him something he had forgotten. A person's value was never determined by their wealth, their position, or what others expected them to be. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had kept walking that morning? Olivia asked with a smile. Ethan looked at her and laughed softly. I think about it often. He paused for a moment. I thought I was the one who needed to help you. I never realized you were the person who would help me find my way back. Olivia smiled because she understood exactly what he meant. She had not changed Ethan by giving him something he did not have. She changed him by reminding him of something he already carried inside. compassion, humility, the ability to care. Their story was never about a billionaire saving a single mother or a single mother changing a billionaire's life through luck. It was about two people from different worlds discovering that kindness could create a bridge between them. Ethan had spent years searching for success. Olivia had spent years searching for stability. Together, they found something greater. They found a life filled with purpose, understanding, and love. And sometimes, the smallest act of kindness becomes the beginning of the biggest transformation. Because the person you stop to help today may be the person who changes your entire tomorrow.